Okay, welcome back everyone. Nice to see you guys this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. We're going to start our class with meditation. And what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to provide any guidance because you guys have been meditating for a little bit. Now you need to kind of start transitioning over to meditating on your own without guidance. So I'm going to do the chanting like I would normally do, easing into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join along. Then you know that you just focus on your breath. When the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go, bringing the mind back to the breath. Then after we've been meditating for a little while, then I will come in with the chants, and that's where we'll end our meditation. Afterwards, we're going to discuss this topic of what is Kamma and how does it affect me. Then after our mid-morning break, there's the topic of what is merit and continued support on the path to enlightenment. We're going to take our lunch break, then we're going to come back and I'm going to teach you how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life, and then we have an activity in the afternoon that we can do as well. So if you guys would like to join along for meditation, you're more than welcome. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะกวาโอตังมหากวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหากวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหากวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะควาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตวาปานุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So at the beginning of the course, I mentioned to you guys that I was going to help build you up to 30 minutes of meditation per session. This was a 30-minute meditation session. So if this felt like, wow, this was just about right, or maybe, wow, this was kind of short, then you kind of know where you're at with your meditation practice. If you felt like it was a little bit long, then you just know that you have some more room to grow in order to be able to get comfortable with this length of a meditation session. But this was 30 minutes of meditation here. So you kind of have a gauge of what that is like during your practice as you're building this up. You would like to kind of build up to this point where you're meditating for this amount of time each individual session. And this is where you're going to see the most benefits in your meditation practice. Now, it's not to say that you couldn't get benefit out of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because you surely will. But when you get up to 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more, this is where you'll see the most benefit. So this topic of what is Kamma and how does it affect me, in my opinion, this kind of ties together the entire course of everything we've been talking about throughout the week. You guys will see what I mean by that when you learn about it. Everything we've been teaching in one way or another has been about the natural law of Kamma. We could say that every single book over there, because all of them are based on the words of the Buddha, it's all the natural law of Kamma in one way or another. There's one book that's dedicated to the natural law of Kamma, but we could really say everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. So we've been helping you to understand that, or I've been helping you to understand that all the way through the course. And anytime you're learning with me, you're learning about this natural law. But now we're going to go in and we're going to talk about it in detail. I'm going to explain to you the 4 types of Kamma: the wholesome Kamma, unwholesome Kamma, old karma and new karma. And I'm going to help you to understand how to eliminate all your unwholesome karma so that by the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing wholesome karma. Just like always, if you guys would like to ask questions, we have the microphones here. For those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, so first, let's just talk about what the natural law of Kamma is. The natural law of Kamma exists and is functioning at all times, and it's affecting every being, whether they're aware of it or not. Everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. Some of you may have heard the word karma. This is from the Sanskrit language, where the original language of the Buddha is in the Pali language, and this is the word Kamma. So people who study his original teachings will tend to use this word Kamma, but it's referring to the same natural law. And if this translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everyone to understand. But instead, this word Kamma, it translates to multiple things, so I need to still use this word Kamma because it doesn't translate to just one English word. The word Kamma means cause and effect, action and results, the results of your decisions, that there's a certain decision that is made and there's going to be a certain result of that. And as you guys are going to see, there's wise and unwise decisions, and it's going to produce either wholesome or unwholesome karma. But in general, what karma means is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. Oftentimes when people are experiencing things in life, you might think that it's good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or you might think other people are causing the things that you're experiencing, or some people think that there's some being or some universe or some entity that's controlling what you experience and punishing you and rewarding you. This isn't actually true. This is all belief. This is part of that unknowing of true reality, and as long as your mind stays stuck in that, you'll never be able to make wiser decisions to experience improved results in your life. By understanding the natural law of Kamma, which is cause and effect, or action and result, essentially a sequence of events, this really empowers you, because if there's anything that you don't particularly care for in your life, you can just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. Whereas if it's good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or if it's everybody else who's making you experience the things that you experience, or if there's some being or entity that's overseeing everything and punishing you and rewarding you, you're stuck. You can't do anything at all to change any aspect of your life, because you can't change good luck or bad luck. You can't change destiny or fate. You can't change other beings to do things your way. And you can't change any kind of supreme being like God or some universe or some other entity that people might talk about that thinks that that's why they're experiencing the things that they're experiencing. Every single thing you experience in life is based on the decisions that you're making. So all you need to do to improve what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. In order to do that, you need to know the natural law of Kamma. And that's what's going to bring you to the point where you can extinguish all your unwholesome karma and produce only wholesome karma. So this natural law of Kamma, as I mentioned, is affecting every being, whether they're aware of it or not. So the more you understand this natural law, the more you can make decisions based in it. When you lack wisdom of this natural law, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions, and now you're going to experience the unwholesome results because of it. So by understanding more and more about this natural law, you'll be able to then experience only wholesome karma. As I've mentioned, there's no being or entity that's overseeing the functioning of any aspect of the entire world, including this natural law of Kamma. So this natural law of Kamma isn't administered by some being. It's actually cause and effect. It's just a result of the way things are occurring in the world. It's a sequence of events. And this is happening based on your own intentions, your speech, and your actions. The decisions that you choose to make in your day-to-day life, that's what's going to produce the Kamma. That's what's going to produce the results that you experience in your day-to-day life. It's not a system of punishments and rewards. Sometimes people think of it that way. And if that's the way you've been taught in other traditions or even in other things that you've been learning, then you might think that way when you start learning about the natural law of Kamma. It's not punishments and rewards. It's a sequence of events, of things that is occurring. That whenever there's a certain decision, there's going to be a certain result. It's also not about who's to blame or who's at fault. Sometimes people think it's that way, that it's all about who's to blame or who's at fault. It has nothing to do with that either. It's just cause and effect, or a sequence of events. It's also not anything mystical or magical, or like a dark cloud following you around. I've heard all kinds of things that people talk about. Some people talk about the natural law of Kamma like a bank account, that you're making deposits into it. And then because you've made so many deposits of doing so many wholesome things, now you can start withdrawing things and doing unwholesome things. And now people talk about it like a bank account. This isn't actually true. It's not a black cloud following you around. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's right here, right now, that you can see it for yourself. So if you think that what you experience is good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or other people are controlling what you experience, or it's God or some other entity, then I would encourage you to look at your life. Right now, you can look at your life and reflect on it and ask yourself, what part of your life are you experiencing that is from somebody else, that somebody else made the decisions? Ask yourself, who chose the seat where you're sitting right now? Who chose the hairstyle that you're wearing? Who chose the clothes that you're wearing? Who chose whether or not you ate breakfast this morning? If you ate breakfast, who chose the food that you ate this morning? Who chose where you live? Who chose how much education you either got or didn't get? All these decisions are your decisions. Where you work, the types of friends that you have, how much money you have in your bank account. All these things are choices and decisions that you're making. And as you see this more and more clearly, you'll be able to see if there's any particular thing that you don't care for that's happening in your life. Cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. Okay, so this is just kind of an introduction to the natural law of Kamma. Now, this is just kind of like a summary, just to kind of remind you of what we just talked about, that it's this cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. It's important that you maintain the understanding that it's your life, your decisions, and your results. What you're experiencing is not from other people. Because if you get your mind diluted into that point of view, then you can't ever change anything about your life. So these are some words from the Buddha about certain points of the natural law of Kamma that you need to understand as we're approaching this topic. As I mentioned, everything the Buddha taught in one way or another comes back to this natural law, but this illustrates two important points that you need to know at this point as you're approaching the natural law of Kamma to understand it. He says here, beings are the owners of their Kamma, the heirs of their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Kamma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. What he's saying here is that you're the one who produces your Kamma. Nobody else can produce it for you. So sometimes you might hear somebody say like, oh, don't rub your unwholesome Kamma off on me. Or, hey, let me give you some of my wholesome Kamma. You can't do that. It's not possible. What you're experiencing is the results of your decisions. Other people can't make decisions for you. You're the one who's making any particular decision. And that's what the Buddha is saying, that anything you decide, that's what's producing the Kamma, either wholesome or unwholesome. You are going to experience that as a result of your decisions, not somebody else's decisions. Then he says, the result of Kamma, I say, is threefold. To be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. That some subsequent occasion is some rebirth beyond the next one, right? So what he's saying here is you can't run and hide from your Kamma. Any decisions you make, wise or unwise, you're going to experience the results of it. Now, I know that many of you maybe haven't been able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth yet. That's not something that maybe you've approached yet. But remember, there's the ability for you to do that. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different ways that you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But at some point, you might decide to approach that. Right now might not be that time. But just understand that this is what the Buddha is teaching, because it is the truth that you're experiencing continuous lives over and over and over again. You may not have been able to independently verify yet. It might not be the time for you to do that, but at some point you will, and you'll be able to understand what he's sharing here, which is you can't run and hide from any decisions that you're making. So once you understand that it's your decisions that are leading to any results, and you can't run and hide from your decisions, the next thing might become, well, let me learn about this natural law of Kamma. Let me understand it so that I can now navigate this world more peacefully and experience only wholesome Kamma in my day-to-day life. So I'm going to teach you the 4 types of Kamma: wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma, and then old Kamma and new Kamma. What wholesome Kamma is any decisions that are harmless, where you're not causing harm to other beings. And then the unwholesome Kamma are any decisions that you're making that are harmful. Remember, you can't cause somebody else to be discontent, just like somebody can't cause you to be discontent. If you're angry or sad or frustrated or irritated, annoyed, feeling guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, any of these feelings, these are all being caused by your own mind because of craving, desire, attachment. You're causing that just like everybody else, but you can cause somebody harm. What it means to cause someone harm is to cause harm to their material possessions, to cause harm to their physical body, to cause harm to their reputation. If you're making decisions that are harmless, meaning that you're not causing harm to others, then there's no harm that's going to come back to you. And if you're making decisions that are harmful, then you're going to experience harm coming back to you. So right now, you guys are just sitting here listening to me talk. You're not causing any harm to anybody. That's why no harm is coming to you. But if you were poking the person next to you in the eye, or spitting in their face, or slapping them around with your hand, there's going to be some harm that comes to you because of that, because you're causing harm to this person's physical body, right? So there's harmless decisions, which produce wholesome Kamma, and then there's harmful decisions, which produce unwholesome Kamma. Then there's old Kamma and new Kamma. What old Kamma is any decisions that you've made in the past that you're experiencing the results of now. And new Kamma is any decisions you're making now that you're going to experience the results of in the future. So let me give you an example of this. Let's just say in the past, maybe 3 years ago, I lied on a government form. I was reporting my income, and now I'm going to be taxed based on whatever I report as an income. And 3 years ago, I lied on this tax form. And now 3 years later, I get a notice in the mail that says I owe the government $3,000. $1,000 for the initial amount, $1,000 for the interest, and $1,000 penalty. And now I've gotten this letter in my hand. This is old Kamma. This is decisions that I made in the past that is now being experienced now. So this is old, unwholesome Kamma. Okay. But now in the present moment, I've got some decisions to make of how to handle this. If I didn't understand the natural law of Kamma, I might rip up the letter and throw it away. I might try to run and hide from it. Or if I didn't understand the natural law of Kamma, I might call up the government and yell and holler and cuss at them. I might write them a nasty letter. I might do all kinds of things like this, right? And now I'm making new Kamma that is unwholesome. But what you would like to do is you would like to extinguish this unwholesome Kamma that's coming back to you. This old unwholesome Kamma needs to be extinguished. So if you're wise about the natural law of Kamma, you know the last thing you're going to do is rip up this letter and throw it away, or call up the government or write them a nasty letter. You're not going to do that, be bitter and harsh and hostile, because part of the Eightfold Path, you know that it's unwise to do those things. Instead, in the present moment, someone who understands the natural law of Kamma would probably call up the government or write them a letter, take responsibility for this, say, hey, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I would like to clear this up, but I don't have $3,000. I'm so sorry. And maybe you're so polite and kind and friendly to say, hey, you know what? It's okay. You don't have to pay us the penalty and the interest. Just pay us the $1,000 and we'll be good. And you might be further polite and kind, and you say, hey, I'd really like to pay that $1,000, but I don't even have $1,000. I'm really sorry. And they might say, hey, you know what? How about we work out a payment plan over the next 10 months or so, 12 months or so? Why don't you pay us a little bit each month, and then we can clear this out and everything will be fine, right? From being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, you'll be able to now clean this up and extinguish it, where now you don't have to deal with it. So now in the present moment, you're making new decisions that is producing new wholesome karma, where the other person who didn't understand this natural law, they were creating new unwholesome karma that they're going to have to deal with in the future. So what you're looking to do is produce wholesome karma and continue to produce more and more wholesome karma. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to help you to do that. But now let me show you some more words of the Buddha about how you're producing unwholesome karma, because you've been learning about this throughout the course, but now you can see it in his words. What's producing the unwholesome karma is when you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. We talked about this yesterday with the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots. Whenever you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, it's producing unwholesome results. Remember, the craving is the longing, the yearning, the selfish desires, wanting things to be self-satisfying for yourself. Right? This is the longing, the yearning, forming your inner feelings based on whether you get this thing or not. If you get it, you're happy. If you don't get it, you're sad or frustrated. So the mind pursues its selfish desires based in craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, seeking satisfaction externally. Whenever you're making decisions through those selfish desires, it's producing unwholesome results. Then there's that anger that can arise. And when that anger, that bitterness, that harshness, the hostility, the animosity, the resentment is arising, you're going to be making decisions about your intentions, speech, and actions that are going to produce unwholesome results for you. And you can look at your life and you can see where that has occurred. Whenever you've done that, it's produced unwholesome results for you, or unwholesome karma. And where all of that is coming from is that ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. Because the mind lacks wisdom of these natural laws, because it doesn't understand craving and anger, because it lacks wisdom of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and all these other teachings, it just continues to make these unwise decisions over and over and over again, being stuck in this constant cycle of experiencing unwholesome results. So whenever the mind is making decisions based in craving, anger, and ignorance, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So what you're doing on this path is you're gradually bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance through all those teachings with meditation and all the other aspects of the Eightfold Path. And then what you're working on is you're bringing up the wholesome roots, so that now more and more you're making decisions through the wholesome roots of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, because these are the exact opposites of craving, anger, and ignorance. So generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. So when you're giving and sharing with other people and practicing generosity, this is going to produce wholesome results for you, because you're not basing your decisions in selfish desires. You're living open-handedly and being joyful in sharing with other people. And you need to be able to do that from the middle way. We're going to talk about this after our mid-morning break, but you need to practice your generosity from the middle way. Whereas if you were doing it excessively, you wouldn't have what you need to be able to sustain your life in terms of your time, effort, energy, and resources. But if you were never sharing with others, your mind would be quite selfish. So that's why you need to find the middle way with your generosity. Then there's loving kindness. This is the exact opposite of anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance. When all of that is arising, you're going to produce unwholesome results. But if you're making decisions through this loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards others, this is going to produce wholesome results for you. And remember, when you're practicing loving kindness, you need to practice loving kindness towards this being as well, right? You need to have loving kindness for this being that you are. So when you're making decisions based on loving kindness for all beings, this is going to produce wholesome results for you. And then when you're making decisions based in wisdom, which is the exact opposite of the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, when you base your decisions in things like the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, the Natural Law of Kamma, and all these other teachings, now you're making wiser and wiser decisions, and you're able to navigate the world more peacefully. And you're able to now make wise decisions that is producing wholesome results. So this is what's producing the wholesome karma, is when you're basing your decisions in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And what you're doing is you're gradually bringing down the unwholesome roots, and you're gradually increasing the wholesome roots until such a point that you fully purified the mind of all the unwholesome roots. You've uprooted them, and now you're only making decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have. After this, I'm going to teach you how to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma by producing wholesome Kamma. Do you guys have any questions here? Jack? And for those of you guys online, remember you guys can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom.
Okay. The other day, there was one example you gave about punching your boss in the face.
Lost the mic. I haven't seen anybody changing the batteries. Usually students change the batteries during the course.
Okay, let's try again. Okay, you said the other day, one example you gave about hitting your boss in the face would bring unwholesome karma. Say you lost your job, obviously because you hit your boss in the face. Is that now settled? Or can you expect more bad results from that one action?
The exact results of what happens in any given situation is going to be unique in each situation. The Buddha gives general guidance of what one would experience in certain situations, but he doesn't give you exactly what you'll experience in every single situation, because we all experience Kamma in a different way. He gave this great analogy. He talks about this bowl of water, and he talks about this river of water, and he talks about this lump of salt. And he says this lump of salt, if it goes into the bowl of water, would the water still be drinkable? Would the water still be drinkable if the lump of salt goes into this bowl of water?
Depends on how much water you're talking about.
It's just a small bowl of water, and there's this huge lump of salt that goes into the bowl of water.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be drinkable, right? No. But now if you put that same lump of salt in a river, would the water still be drinkable? Yes, right? So the water represents the amount of wholesome Kamma that you've generated in the past. The lump of salt represents the unwholesome Kamma that someone's now generating. So depending on each individual variable of each individual person, you're going to experience this Kamma in different ways and unique ways. So he gives this great analogy about that to help you see that not everybody's going to experience Kamma in the exact same way. He also describes something, he talks about the exact result of Kamma is something that if you tried to discern this, that it would lead to your madness or frustration. So you can't know with 100% certainty, 100% of exactly what you're going to experience in every situation. We can talk generally, like we know if you punch your boss, probably going to punch you back, but we don't know for sure. He could, maybe not, or she could, but maybe not, right? Probably going to lose your job, but maybe not. You don't know, right? Each situation is going to be different. So potentially there could be other ramifications. Maybe not only losing your job, you could get arrested, you could go to court, you'd have to pay lawyer fees, you maybe have to go to jail for a little bit. Who knows? It depends on the actions of the boss. Does the boss press charges with the police or not? So there's so many variables, you can't give it like exactly what would happen. And the Buddha says if you try to discern that it would lead to madness or frustration.
Okay, I have a second question. How about inaction? So I would say you go past somewhere and you see somebody getting beaten up, and you just decide to walk on, and that person dies. Or is that good karma, bad karma? How would you define that?
In that situation, there wouldn't be any Kamma for you at all, because there has to be intention behind a decision. You have to actively make a decision to do something in order for there to be Kamma. So for example, if I'm walking down the street and there's a cockroach that runs under my foot and I smash it and kill it, there's no Kamma there, because the intention wasn't to kill the cockroach. I was just walking down the street. That was my intention. And I didn't have the intention to kill. Versus if I was walking down the street, stomping my feet and trying to actively kill the cockroaches, here there's Kamma, because there's intention behind it. I'm functioning through craving, anger, and ignorance now. So there's no responsibility for anybody to take action in a certain situation, because again, each one of those variables are different. Potentially in some situations, you might actually step in and try to help this person, but in other situations, there could be other variables where it doesn't make sense for you to do that. You know, if there's 10 people there with knives and guns and baseball bats, and it's just you, it would be unwise. The wiser thing might be to go get the police or go get a gang of people yourself and come back if that's what you would like to do. But you're not required to do that. And having not done anything, you won't experience any kamma as a result of that, for that particular example. Now, if you chose, like, let's just say you had termites eating your house and you chose not to do anything about it, now you're going to experience unwholesome kamma, right? These beings are going to eat your house, destroy your house. So it doesn't mean that no inaction will never produce unwholesome kamma. It just depends on the situation. But that particular situation, you wouldn't experience any unwholesome kamma. Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions online. So let's go to the next piece, which is I'm going to help you to understand how to extinguish all your unwholesome kamma, because that's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is you're working to extinguish all your unwholesome kamma and produce only wholesome kamma. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing wholesome kamma. Only wholesome things are occurring in your life. So what's happened in the past is, prior to getting on this path, we've all made lots of unwise decisions. We might think about this like putting mud into a garden hose, that we've all been putting mud into our garden hose. We've been making unwise decisions inadvertently because of our lack of wisdom, because of our ignorance of craving and anger. We've made decisions based in craving, anger, and ignorance, and we're going to have to experience the results of that. We can't run and hide from it. So this mud that we've been putting into the garden hose, we're going to have to experience it. So what we might be doing, the way that we can think about it on this path to enlightenment, is taking this garden hose and hooking it up to a faucet. And now we open up the faucet and start putting clean water into the garden hose. This is making wise decisions into your life. Well, if you open up the garden hose, you have a little drip coming through this impacted garden hose with mud, you're not going to clean that out this lifetime. So if you're coming to the temple once every 6 months, if you're meditating once a week, once a month, you're not going to clean out this garden hose this life. It's just not going to be possible. But if you open up that faucet wider and wider, and you get more and more clean water coming into the garden hose, what's going to happen is it's going to spit mud for a while, because we've been putting mud into this garden hose. It's going to spit mud. But then after spitting mud for a while, every once in a while, you're going to get some clean water coming out. It's like, whoa, because now you're making wiser decisions. You're starting to meditate. You're coming to the temple. You're getting help from a teacher. You're reading books. You're going to start making wiser and wiser decisions. You're putting wise decisions into your life. And now, while the garden hose is going to spit mud for a while, you're going to have some clean water come out. But then it's going to spit some more mud. And now it's going to be mud. And then it's going to spit some clean water and clean water. Then it's going to be mud. And then clean water, and some mud. And then clean water, and then a little bit of mud. And this is going to be how it cleans out. And the way that you put water into your garden hose is by making decisions through the Eightfold Path. When you're making decisions through the Eightfold Path, this is what's going to produce the wholesome results for you. So when you guys learn things like right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, this is helping you to learn how to put clean water into your garden hose. So let's just take a simple thing like right speech, for example. If we've learned right speech, we understand speaking without lies, without slander, without harsh speech, and without frivolous speech. And then in more detail, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech is speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. So if we start speaking that way more and more in all of our relationships, now we're going to be putting more and more wise decisions into these relationships, and we'll start seeing over time that these things will clean out, right? But you're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and instantly practice right speech with everybody in your life. And that's where the mental discipline section comes in, where you need to be training your mind so that more and more you'll get better and better at producing wise decisions related to things like your speech. So in the past, we've all produced unwholesome karma. We've been putting mud into our garden hose, but now in the present moment, we're creating new karma, and we can choose to produce wholesome karma in the present moment. And this is what will extinguish all your unwholesome karma, is by making wiser and wiser decisions in the present moment. Between now and enlightenment, you're still going to be putting some mud in your garden hose because you still have craving, anger, and ignorance in your mind. So as you're gradually increasing your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, you're going to be gradually putting more and more of those wise decisions into your garden hose. And then you're gradually decreasing the craving, anger, and ignorance, where you're putting less and less mud into your garden hose. And eventually you're going to be able to clean out this entire garden hose, and you'll experience nothing but wholesome results in your day-to-day life. I'm going to give you some examples from my private life so you guys can see how this works. When I grew up, I grew up in a very hostile and very, very bitter and very harsh environment. I learned early on to yell and holler and scream. This is what my family did. I remember going to a restaurant one time at McDonald's, and one time the person didn't give us our French fries, and my mom just blew her top, and she was yelling and hollering at the person, right? And this is what I learned growing up. And this is what we tend to do as a child. We conform to what's going on around us. Our mind is conditioned based on what we experience in our day-to-day life. So our mind takes on that conditioning, and we think that this is the way that we should function. So as I was growing up, I was bitter and harsh and hostile to a certain extent. Of course, I was polite, kind, friendly, respectful in certain situations, but this is what I learned. So as I met my current wife, who we've been together, about 18 years at this point, now that we've been together 18 years, at the very beginning, we had lots of difficulties, but now our life is completely cleaned up. But at the very beginning, of course, we were on that honeymoon phase, right? When we first got together, I was on my best behavior. But after we got to know each other a little bit, some of that bitterness and hostility and harshness was coming out all through our relationship. And I was putting that mud into the garden hose. But at the 11th year mark, for one reason or another, I decided that I was interested in something different. I'd experienced this life of turmoil and frustration and agitation, and I was interested in improving my life and experiencing different results. So I decided to start learning and practicing these teachings and training my mind. And I started to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful with my wife. But she was still bitter and harsh and hostile. I had to experience the results of those decisions of 11 years of being bitter, harsh, and hostile with her. I still had to experience that. So there were times where I would come home and I was just minding my own business, just coming home, and she would start yelling and hollering at me, right? And sometimes what I would do is I would just walk away, right? That's the best thing to do, because there's nothing I can do for this person. They're angry. I didn't cause it. It's their own mind that's causing that anger. I didn't cause it, and I can't fix it. They have to choose to let go. So the best thing to do when someone's being bitter, harsh, and hostile with you is just walk away. So that's what I would do the most early on. But then as I started gaining more and more control over my mind, sometimes she would be bitter, harsh, and hostile, and I would sit there and I would listen to her, and I'd just let her vent and just yelling and hollering at me, telling me how bad of a husband I was, and I did this wrong and that wrong and this wrong, bringing up stuff long in the past. And I would just sit there and listen to her. And after she was done, I would say, "Thank you, dear." And I would why her and I'd walk away. Other times I would come in, she would be doing those kinds of things, yelling and hollering, telling me how bad of a husband I was. I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I was a really bad husband. I made some really unwise decisions. You're 100% right, but I'm not doing those things anymore." Right? And I would help her to see that I'm not doing those things anymore. And sometimes she'd be yelling and hollering. I'd be like, "Get it all out. What else did I do? Tell me about it. What else did I do?" I'd be like egging her on, because I knew she had this fire in her mind and she needed to extinguish it. And she was venting and venting and venting. But I was only doing this once I had control over my mind. Initially, I would just walk away, right? But once I had more control over my mind and I was more cheerful, I was more joyful, I knew that I wasn't the cause of her anger and I needed to help her extinguish it, I would just kind of like, "Really? What else did I do? What else did I do? Come on, get it all out. Tell me about it. Come on, tell me about it." And then she would get it all out. And then eventually it would die out and I would say, okay, dear, I love you. And I would why and walk away. So over a 1.5-year time frame, you could see this gradual decreasing of her anger, where initially she was very angry and it was very regular and common that she would vent and be hostile and bitter. But because I wasn't putting any anger and hostility back, it extinguished. Over time, it became longer and longer in between these episodes, and they became less and less intense until eventually, after 1.5 years of that, it was all extinguished. And now she's only loving and kind and warm and gentle with me, right? When we've been together for 18 years, but we've only been happily married for about 6 years, right? So you can be together with someone for a long time, but whether you're happily with this person and both of you are in a marriage that you feel comfortable with, that's going to take some time to work on. So we had to work on this in order to get to this peace and joy. But I had to extinguish my unwholesome karma with my wife. And that's the way that I did it. I just ended up walking away. But then I had some more unwholesome karma to extinguish, that I noticed my son was starting to be bitter and harsh and hostile with his mom. At the age of 6 years old, he had seen dad for all these different years be bitter, harsh, and hostile with his mom, and he had learned that from me. And him and his mom were having a difficult relationship. So now I had to teach my son and I had to teach my wife how to get along with right speech and all these other teachings. So I had to teach both of them how to understand the Eightfold Path and how to practice it with each other. So over a period of time, my son extinguished his unwise decisions, my wife extinguished her unwise decisions, and now they have a wonderful relationship. They're never bitter, harsh, and hostile with each other. They're only loving and kind and warm and gentle with each other. So now at our home, not only the three of us, but even our extended family, there's never any arguments. We're never upset. We're never frustrated or agitated or annoyed with each other. But that came from everybody extinguishing their poisons in their mind and learning how to practice in such a way that we could be loving and kind and warm and gentle with each other. And now we surely disagree in certain situations because that's just impermanence. Where in the past, me and my wife disagreeing, it was like a fight to death to see who was going to win, right? It was like a fight to death. I'm sure you guys have been in those kinds of conversations before, right? But now when there's a disagreement, it's like, oh, of course we have a disagreement because you've had different experiences in your life than I've had in my life, and we have different opinions, and this is just impermanence. That's all it is. You have one opinion, I have another opinion. Let's sit down and talk about it and discuss it and see what we would like to do here, right? And sometimes we walk away with a different decision than what we came in with, but nonetheless, when we walk away, we've discussed it and we either agreed or we've disagreed, and now we just move on and make the decision that we think is best for our individual life. So we're no longer fighting and arguing and being hostile and bitter with each other. So this is something that you guys can work on, and you can accomplish these same kinds of things in your life by extinguishing all your unwholesome karma, by choosing to function through the Eightfold Path. And this is going to take time for you to train your mind to be able to do this. So as I was speaking yesterday, there's certain there's certain relationships that you have now that you might decide to just move on from. You might look at the relationship, realize that you're not committed to it. There's too much bitterness. There's too much hostility. You're not interested in repairing the relationship, and it's better for both of you guys just to move on. And you don't have to go to this person. You don't have to download all the reasons why you're not going to be their friend anymore, because all that is you listing out your cravings. You're listing out your expectations. You didn't do this, you didn't do that, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do this, and I expected you to do this, and you didn't do that, so therefore I can't be your friend. Right? That's just your cravings, desires, attachments that you're listing out. So instead, if you've decided you're going to end a relationship, just slowly move on. Right? If you normally talk to this person once a week or once every couple of days, just slowly elongate that. It's like you're walking off into the sunset over the hill, and you can just slowly move away. It allows your mind to move away, and it allows their mind to move away. Whereas if you go to them and you download a bunch of reasons why you can't be their friend anymore, when you see them in the public a few months from now or a few years from now, there's going to be this bitterness and hostility and anger from that person, right? If it's not coming from you, it's going to be from them. So instead, just gradually move on. You got some work to do, and so do they. Right now, if you see each other in the future, Hey, Bob, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. How you been? Right? You can catch up with people because you didn't have this conflict where you're downloading all these reasons why you can't be their friend. Because now when they experience that impermanence, they're going to try to hold on and cling, or they're going to get angry and bitter and harsh with you. So it's better to just move on. Then there's that second category of relationships, ones that you're more committed to. Maybe your life partner, maybe your friends or family, maybe your mom or dad, where it's not going very well right now. And maybe you need to do some work on your own mind. And now as you do some work on your mind, maybe they're choosing to do some work on their mind. Now you guys can come into the relationship and you can improve. And you can improve your Kamma, where you're not functioning through craving, anger, and ignorance anymore. You're practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. Because during that time frame that I was cleaning things up with my wife, I was also taking her avocados, right? I was also taking her places to get a massage. I was doing these kinds of things to practice generosity, not because I wanted anything from her, but because I knew generosity was wise. So what if I was at the market buying myself something? I know she likes avocados. I'd pick a couple up for her too. So I'd be practicing generosity with her to help clean this up. And then I was practicing loving kindness and wisdom, right? So in these relationships that you need to clean up, you're going to need to clean up your mind so that you're practicing right intention, right speech, and right action. But you're also going to need to be practicing some generosity in these relationships to be able to clean it up, clean up your unwholesome Kamma. Then there's that third category of relationships, brand new people you haven't even met yet, that you'll only ever be loving and kind with. Maybe people in this community, maybe people that you move to a new neighborhood, neighbors, co-workers, maybe a new job that you take or something like this, new business partners, new customers. You're only ever going to be loving and kind in those relationships, and that's what you're going to experience coming back to you because you'll be practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So this is how you clean up all your relationships in your life, is you let go of current relationships that you know that are not repairable, or else you're not even interested in repairing it. There's just too much hostility there on your side or their side. There's relationships you're currently in that you are committed to, and you're going to clean up your mind and then be better in this relationship. And then there's that third category of brand new people that you're only ever going to be loving and kind to. And this is what's going to clean up your life and your relationships. It's important to understand that you're never going to be in a world where everybody loves you, or everybody likes you, or everybody thinks that you're a great person. That would be permanence. Sometimes people think that that's their goal, is to go out into the world and convince everybody that they are a good person. And now if somebody has a negative view of you, your mind will be discontent. Remember, the Buddha, all the wonderful things that he's done in the world, there's people that hate him, right? Same thing with Jesus Christ. He did some wonderful things in the world. There's people that absolutely hate Jesus Christ. So if there's people that hate the Buddha and hate Jesus Christ, what do you think about you? You think there's going to be people that hate you? But you need to be able to understand that the hate that those people have, it's coming from their own mind. It's not coming from your mind. It's coming from their mind. They're having a certain expectation of you and wanting you to be a certain way. And when you are not that way, their hate is arising, right? So if somebody hates you, that is an indication to you that this person is having craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. They're wanting you to be a certain way. And that's the last kind of relationship that you would be interested in. If somebody's trying to control you and put expectations on you, that's the last kind of relationship that you would be interested in. You'd like to move beyond those kinds of things. So if somebody hates you, then just move on. No need to try to convince that person otherwise. Just be comfortable with the fact that not everyone's going to love you, not everyone's going to like you, not everyone's going to think that you're a great person. But the people who do, spend time with them and enjoy your relationships, because you know that you're a work in progress and you're working on these things. So there's always going to be people in the world that dislike you. That's impermanence. But if your mind doesn't crave permanence, you can be understanding and comfortable with that. And of course, as you're working on improving the condition of your mind and the way you make decisions, there will be more and more people that will tend to like you and enjoy being with you. But even still, Even when you're enlightened, there's still going to be people who don't think that you're such a nice person. And that's from coming from their own mind. So eliminating your unwholesome karma and experiencing only wholesome karma doesn't mean that people are going to treat you glowingly, right? Even as an enlightened being, you can go out into the world and someone could be bitter and harsh and hostile with you. What's happening in that situation is that person is having craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind. But because you've extinguished all your unwholesome karma, your mind's going to be fully protected. When this person is bitter, harsh, and hostile with you, you won't experience any discontentedness whatsoever. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will experience 99.9% of your interactions are all going to be very loving and kind and warm and gentle. You'll see that people around you will treat you wonderfully. But you're going to have that rare situation where you'll interact with somebody that you haven't met before or doesn't know you, or some person on Facebook or something like that, and people will be bitter and harsh and hostile. But in that situation, your mind will be fully protected and you won't experience any discontentedness. That's what it means to extinguish your unwholesome karma, that your mind is fully protected. It doesn't mean that people are going to treat you a certain way, because you can't control what other people do. You can only control your own mind. So cleaning up your unwholesome karma is to extinguish all your unwholesome karma by producing wise decisions in the present moment that is producing new wholesome karma. And the way you do that is through the Eightfold Path, through training your mind in each one of these individual factors. Do you guys have any questions on cleaning up your karma? Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to get clear in a close relationship. I understand expectations is the craving and all that, but how do you establish, is boundaries just expectations? Like how do you navigate that in a closer relationship with communicating? I mean, when you say needs, then it goes back to cravings, but how do you have a relationship then?
Yeah. So this whole idea of boundaries that people talk about today, this is all craving, desire, attachment. The idea that I'm going to establish boundaries and now I need to go around the world and teach people what my boundaries are. And now you have crossed my boundary. So now I'm angry at you and this is justified because you've crossed a boundary. This is craving, desire, attachment. This is trying to create a little bubble and go around the world and teach everybody how to do things my way. And there's 8 billion people in the world and you can't do it. That's why boundaries don't work. Instead, you have wisdom in your mind of wise decision making, and you make wise decisions based on what it is that you would like to do. So let's just say you're at a grocery store and somebody came up and touched you inappropriately in a way that you aren't interested in them touching you. Well, your decision is you move away from that person, get away from them. You don't have to sit there and say, you've crossed my boundary and you've touched me in an inappropriate way and how dare you cross my boundary. No, you don't have to teach this person anything. You just make the decision. You maintain the control of what you experience in life. So now you move away. And if you're going to contact the police or whatever else you do, that's a decision for you to make. But those are decisions that you can make. So in a relationship, like say like a husband-wife, like me and my wife, I don't have any expectations of my wife, and she doesn't have any expectations of me, where in the past that wasn't the case. Like she might have an expectation that I will take out the trash, right? And she might say, hey, I'm going upstairs to sleep, take out the trash, I'll see you in the morning or whatever, right? And now let's just say I'm working on the computer and I don't even remember to take out the trash, and I go upstairs and I go to sleep without even remembering. Now, if she has an expectation, she's going to come downstairs and she's going to see that the trash wasn't taken out and she's going to get angry because I didn't do what she wanted me to do. Whereas if she's just like, hey, would you mind taking out the trash? And I say, yeah, sure. And now I forget and I go upstairs and I go to sleep and she comes downstairs and she's like, oh, he hasn't taken out the trash. Okay, up to him. You know, I've asked him to take out the trash, but she's not expecting it. She's not longing, yearning for it. So now she can maintain her contentedness. And now she has a decision to make of what to do next. Maybe when I come downstairs in the morning, I realize like, oh, I forgot, and maybe I'll take it out. Or maybe she's like, oh, he didn't take it out, so maybe I'll take it out myself, right? These are decisions that she could make rather than sit there with her feet dug in and like, he's got to take out the trash because I told him to do it and he's got to do it my way. That's the expectations, and you would like to get rid of them. But that doesn't mean you can't communicate about things to take care of in the home. Like one of the things we have at our home is we have that big water bottle, like over there, similar to that, where you got to flip it. My wife has an injured knee, and it's been injured for a very long time, and it's probably going to be like that for the rest of her life. And she finds it very hard to put the water in. So I tend to do this as much as I can because I know it's hard for her. But every once in a while, because of impermanence, she's got to do it. And she's going to need to do it because I'm not there. Maybe I'm gone on business for traveling around to teach the teachings of the Buddha or whatever. So she's going to have to do it. But in most cases, I do it. But if she had an expectation for me to do it, she'd be discontent when I don't do it. So you would like to get to the point where you're not expecting and requiring things of each other, but that doesn't mean you can't talk and you can't discuss and you can't figure out what's going to be best in any given situation. So we have discussions about picking up my son after school. The way that we generally do it is she takes him to school, I pick him up, but there's times where she has to say to me, like, hey, would you mind taking him today? And there's times where I talk to her and I say, hey, would you mind picking him up today? So we don't have an expectation that she will always take him and I will always pick him up, because that would be permanence. We understand that there's going to need to be change here. So we have this general kind of thing that she generally takes him, I generally pick him up, but we also shift and change that throughout the month because of impermanence. So you would like to get to the point where you don't have any expectation of this person. This person is free to make all their own decisions. And now whatever they choose to do is based on their own decisions. And this is what's beautiful in a relationship. Whereas if you start putting expectations on each other and requiring each other to do things, that person is only going to do those things as long as you kind of pressure them into doing it. Where when my wife does something, I know she's doing it based on her own choice. So there's times where like she'll bring me home some fruit or she'll bring me home some food. And it's like, wow, this is very lovely. I know she doesn't want anything from me because I don't give her any money. We don't have sex with each other anymore. So I know it has nothing to do with that. You name it. There's nothing that I want from her. So whenever she does do something, I know she's doing it out of the kindness of her heart. And same thing with me. When I do something for her, she knows that he doesn't want anything from me because I don't get any money from her. I don't get any sex from her. I don't get any of that stuff. So we're just doing it because we care about each other and we're practicing being loving and kind. And now your relationship can get to a real stability because you're not trying to force each other to do things a certain way. And you can just feel freedom to just do things the way you would like to do it. I know I've answered this pretty long, but I'll just add one more thing so you can understand this point is in the past, I used to have this expectation that my wife would go out and do things with me. So I would go to her and I'd be like, hey, there's this new movie coming out. Let's go see this new movie. This is going to be really great. I want you to come to this movie. And she's like, no, I don't want to go. And I'd be angry. I'd be like, what do you mean you don't want to go? You're a party pooper. Like, come on, like, let's go have fun. And I'd be pressuring her and putting my expectations on her, being bitter and harsh and hostile. And sometimes she would relent and she would come with me. But she'd be grumpy and irritable the whole time. And then I'd be grumpy because she's not having a good time, right? Because we're attached. We're trying to control each other. Where now I go to her and I'll say, hey, your son and I would like to take you out on a date. We've got this new movie that's coming out and we'd like to take you out for food and go on this date to go to this movie. Would you like to go? And sometimes she says, no, I'm not interested. I'm going to stay here and rest. I got a lot of work to do tomorrow. Okay, no worries. Have fun. We'll see you later. She gets what she would like, which is the rest. We get what we would like, which is going to the movies. Everybody's getting what they need, and we feel really great rather than trying to force and coerce each other. It's almost like a shoe iron or a shoe horse. What do they call that? What do they call that thing? Shoehorn. Trying to like force your foot into a pair of shoes. That's what I was doing before, trying to force her into our life, where now she chooses to join us in our life based on her choices rather than our expectations. And that's what you would ultimately like to get to, because now everybody's doing what they feel good about. Mm-hmm. Do you have a question?
To ask you, in your case, with your wife and your son, did they absorb it from your behavior and then they felt that was helpful and they started behaving the same way? Or did you have a conversation for them to have like a teacher, as you said, and like they did a study and all of that?
To learn the teachings, right? To learn the teachings, right?
To basically change behavior, because you said that before your wife was having like angry behaviors and expectations, and now you don't have that anymore, and there's like an acceptance, and I suppose then she also accepts, having different dynamics, even like intimate, different and all of that. So did she just absorb it, seeing that you changed and then she changed, or at a certain point she or them decided to like study and have the teachings?
There were multiple things that were happening. There was, yes, that by me changing my behavior and functioning differently, the family started functioning differently. There was that. There was also the active learning, because my wife was learning through a Thai monk from Bangkok. And then so she was learning from that person, and she was also learning from the original words of the Buddha in Thai. So she's learned it that way. And then the third thing is that I had these skillful ways of helping her to see certain things that she wasn't seeing herself. So I wasn't teaching her with unsolicited guidance. I would do things in like a skillful way. So say she was putting a bunch of expectations on me, and she was trying to control me. I would say things like, I understand what you're doing there. One of the things that I've learned is not to put expectations on people. And I'm really working not to do that for you, is to not put my expectations on you. So I didn't teach her like, hey, you're putting expectations on me. Stop doing that. You shouldn't be putting expectations on me. That's now me putting my expectation on her to stop putting expectations on me. So instead I was like, I understand what you're saying there. One of the things that I've learned in this life is it's really unwise to put expectations on others. And this is something I'm really working on doing, is not putting my expectations on you. And then I would just like walk away. Right? Or there'd be times where like I was editing a podcast, like I was teaching a class, and I'd recorded a podcast, and she would be downstairs in the living room, and I would go down in the living room and start editing the podcast, because I knew this was a topic that she needed to learn. So I'll go downstairs so she could hear it, because I didn't use headphones, so that she could hear me teaching, because she wasn't interested in learning with me directly. So I knew that if I went downstairs and edited the podcast, she would hear me teaching, and then she would listen. And once you learn the truth, you can't unhear it. So I knew, like, rather than just sit in my room and edit the podcast, let me go down there so she could actually hear it. Or there were other situations where like we could see her attachments. So one time, like me and my son were at the table and we were talking at the eating table. And the way that we did it is, at that time, my wife used to wash a lot of the dishes, and we had cups that we would drink water out of. And rather than every single time we get a drink of water and putting it in the sink for her to wash it, we would use the same cup for like 5 or 10 days, and we would just leave it on the table. And one time she came down and she saw our 2 cups there, and we were sitting there talking and having a conversation, and she walks in and she's like, why do you guys got all these cups? You've always got these cups on the table. Like, get rid of these glasses. Like, And like, she's angry because we have these 2 cups that are on the table. And then she walked away. And then me and my son looked at each other, and I said, you know what we need to do, right? Because he had been helping me with some of these things. And he said, yep, I sure do. So we went and got every single glass and cup we could find in the house, and we put them everywhere. We put them on the floor. We put them on the table. We put them on the end table. We put them by the TV. We had probably 20, 30 cups like all over the house. And then she came back downstairs about an hour later, and she stopped and she looked and she looked, and then she just walked away. She let it go, right? So the worst thing that you would like to do is when someone's venting at you with their anger and their hostility, they're showing you what their cravings are. She was craving for there to be no cups. The last thing that we would like to do is walk on eggshells and now start trying to make sure there's no cups on the table, because that's like feeding the monster. And now this monster is going to get bigger. Now we feed it on that one. And now she's like, well, I don't want your shoes there, and I don't want your jacket there, and I don't want this there. Right. And it's like, she's listing out all her cravings. So the last thing we were interested in doing was feeding that. So by us doing what we did, it helped her to see that she's not going to be able to control us, and it helped her mind to let go of this craving. So now we leave cups on the table and she's completely peaceful with it. She's completely fine with it because her mind is let go. So yes, she learned directly from the words of the Buddha and a teacher. She learned just through modification of my behavior. She started seeing me function differently in the world. But then there were things that I did skillfully to be able to help her to see what the teachings were, because someone's not just going to magically learn from your behavior. They're going to need to do some type of learning and some type of growth to be able to do things differently. So like the example I gave you guys yesterday with my mom, when my mom would be bitter, harsh, and hostile with me, it wasn't just goodbye, mom, and hang up the phone. It was, hey, mom, I know I've been bitter and harsh and hostile in the past, and I apologize for that. That was unwise for me to do that. I really would like to see us get to a better relationship, and I'm not interested in being bitter, harsh, and hostile with you anymore. So I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what you just said, and we'll talk another time, Mom. I love you. Bye-bye. Right? So I gave her a little bit of something to think about before I got off the phone. And when you have control over your own mind, this is what will allow you to do that. But if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're agitated when these things are happening, you're not going to be able to do that. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you how to gain control and discipline of your own mind. So now you can skillfully do some of these kinds of things. But you're still not trying to convince other people to do things your way. You're helping them to cultivate wisdom to make better decisions for themselves.
And how, with your son, to differentiate like education from, I guess, telling him to do things in your way, if you want?
Sure. So what I do with my son is I actually taught him the teachings. He knows the Eightfold Path. He knows the Three Universal Truths, the Four Noble Truths. I started teaching him when he was 6 years old. Even when he was an infant, me and my wife were already doing things to help him because we understood the mind. So the four foundations of mindfulness, you guys learned on Tuesday, where if you notice the bodily sensations, you cut off and let go of the arising discontentedness, because if you don't, it's going to become a feeling. Then it's going to affect the condition of your mind, and then it's going to form a mental object. So even when my son was an infant, he would be on the floor playing, and you guys know, if you've been around kids, that when they're getting ready to get discontent, they'll usually make a certain face and then they'll start crying, right? So you got like 2 or 3 seconds there, 4 seconds before they start crying and they're upset and they're discontent. So when he would get that face and we could see he was about to get discontent, we would redirect his mind. We would say, did you see that cloud outside? That's the most beautiful cloud. Come on, let's go look at that cloud. Like we would take him over to the window to look at the cloud, and that would cut off and let go. He didn't know what we were doing because he was just an infant or a toddler, but we knew what we were doing is we were helping to redirect his mind so he wouldn't become discontent. So early on, all throughout his childhood, we were doing these kinds of things. So he was never a child that threw temper tantrums or got upset or angry or frustrated. It would last like minuscule amount of time that we could redirect his mind to something else. So by the time I started formally teaching him at 6 years old, he very rarely was even getting discontent at that point. But now I don't ever see him discontent. Maybe once in a while he'll get a little bit irritated, but not hardly at all ever anymore. In fact, he just told me yesterday that he was at school and this boy stole his lunch out of his locker. And I said, well, what did you think about that? He's like, well, he stole my lunch. I went and talked to the teacher and they handled it. I was like, well, how did you feel? He's like, just dealt with it. And then he told me that this boy is giving him the middle finger and he's telling him F you, and he's done it twice. And I was like, how do you handle that? And he's like, I just walk away. And I was like, oh, good, right? So I formally taught him from the age of 6 on to get to the point now where he's eliminated the vast majority of the pollutions in his mind. He's still not enlightened, but he's probably like in the first, maybe second stage of enlightenment.
I was referring more to, you were said before, like if someone is telling you like put your shoes there or tidy up there, and then the last thing you want to do is, yeah, okay. Like how do you manage that with your son?
Okay, so I don't tell him exactly what he should or shouldn't be doing. he has like this little area in the house downstairs that he puts his shoes, and he created that for himself, and he puts his shoes over there, and it works out just fine. He just follows, he does what he does. He has a little place for his shoes. I didn't tell him to do it. His mom didn't tell him to do it. He just created it for himself. There's certain things that I guide him on, like his homework. I say to him, like, when I used to come home from school, I used to do my homework right away so that then I could play afterwards, and it was like all playtime. And sometimes he does that. When he comes home from school, he'll do his homework right away, but other times he waits and he does it later in the day. So I let him make his own decisions. But for me, what he knows is that we like to see good grades, but he also gets F's sometimes too, and he gets D's sometimes. He gets bad grades, but we don't yell and holler and upset with him. We just sit down and talk with him about what's the issue and why did this occur and what support does he need to be able to improve that. So we just talk and have discussions. I'm not telling him to do this or forcing him to do that or putting my expectations on him to do this. I'm just guiding him towards wise decision making and teaching him what it means to make wise decisions, and then letting him make whatever decisions that he makes, because through the Eightfold Path, he's learned wise decision making, and he just makes those decisions wisely. We don't have any expectations that you have to do it this way, or you have to do it that way, or you have to do it that way.
Thing like tidying up the room or how he dresses, like he has freedom to choose how to manage, because at least in my country it's very normal that families tells you even how to breathe, like the things in a certain way, and there's a right and wrong that is very strong. And I was just wondering if maybe if you give space to people, even if people are like 4 or 5 years old, you might get better results from them being responsible for their own spaces.
Yeah, my son makes all those choices himself. I've never had to tell him to clean up his room. He always keeps it tidy on his own. I've never told him what he should or shouldn't be wearing. There's times where he's come downstairs, like maybe we're going to a school event, and he's got on some clothes, and I know that this is not the best clothes to wear to this event. And I'll say, "Oh, is that what you're planning to wear?" And he'll say, "Yeah, I'm planning to wear that." And I was like, "Oh, what you're probably going to see is people are going to be dressed a little bit nicer than that. I'm not sure if you're planning to continue to wear that or if you'd like to wear something different, but just so you know, people are going to be wearing clothes nicer than what you currently have on." And he'll say, "I'm fine wearing this." I'm like, "Okay, well, if that's what you'd like to wear, let's go." Right? Because I don't have any expectation that he'll wear anything. But sometimes he'll say, "Oh, okay, let me go change my shirt." But it's a decision that he's making. So I'm just giving him information, and then he's making a decision of what he should or shouldn't wear. So he makes all that stuff himself. Mm-hmm. Questions? And by the way, there are certain age groups, right? Like he didn't have all of that from the age of 3, right? Like, because we were dressing him and we were doing things like that. But now at the age of 12, he makes pretty much every decision. I can't think of any decisions that we make for him. Mm-hmm. Even what school he goes to, he picked the school. Even what he eats for lunch, he picks those things. I mean, what he wears to school, all those things he picks himself. Yep.
You probably already answered this, Dave, with that one. I'm talking probably about personal relationships again. This could be families, partners. Certainly in our society, we're taught to compromise. So when you're in a relationship, we need to compromise. Sometimes that involves probably potentially doing things that you wouldn't normally do, but we've been brought up that we should compromise with each other. So is that wrong what we're doing in that respect as well?
Can you give me an example of that? Because each one's going to be different. I think you need another one. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. I can't think off the top of me. Well, I suppose this is only a slight one, but we do come to, but so like when we're travelling, it's, I want to do something or go somewhere and he might want to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
So we just compromise and, all right, I'll do that because you want to do it, but then we will do what I want to do. Is that okay to do that, or should we be doing things separately?
You could do both of those things. In some situations, maybe your ultimate goal is to spend time with him and you don't really care what you guys do and you would rather just go along with whatever he's going to do. In other situations, you're like, no, I really would like to do that thing. And if I go with him, I'm not going to be able to do that thing. So it's okay to split up and you go do some things and he does something different. This is actually really helpful. Sometimes when we go on holiday with our family, we think we have to stay together the whole time, but it's okay to go do separate things. My wife and I, my son, we went on holiday 2 years ago down to Phuket. We did different things at different times. We split up as a family. When we went to the U.S. and to Egypt, same thing. We split up at different times and did different things at different times. You would like to be able to integrate that into your holiday where you don't feel like you have to be with each other all the time. There is impermanence where you're going to be interested in some things and he's going to be interested in other things. And like I mentioned, sometimes you will decide like, okay, I'll just go do this thing with you. And that's what you're choosing to do, but you need to be able to feel comfortable to do things alone, because then you won't feel attached to each other, and you'll actually feel better because you'll go away, you'll have a great time individually without each other, and then when you come back together, you'll have a great time when you're together as well. But if you feel like when you're on holiday like this that you have to do everything together, you're going to start feeling disgruntled and irritated and, oh, I'm not getting what I want and he's always getting what he wants, because now you're holding on so tight. So I don't think about it like compromise, because at the end of the day, it's your decisions of what you're doing. And you've got to decide, what's my real interest here? Is my interest to spend time with him, or is my interest to go do this thing? And just because you're choosing to go do this thing doesn't mean you don't enjoy spending time with him. It's just that you've already done that. And now that you guys have spent some time together, now let me go do this thing that I enjoy also. So I don't think of it like compromise. It's just impermanence, that sometimes you're going to be together and sometimes you're going to be apart.
Again, yeah. Actually, we do. I'm talking about our personal life. We do that, but I must admit, we get a lot of criticism from friends and family that do think it's strange that we actually do things separately like that. But also, I've got a tendency as well that I like to do things for people to make them happy. Yeah. And is that something that I'm craving? Something that I do tend to do a lot of things. I always want people to be happy.
Yeah. Yes. So both, let's talk about these two things separately. So if you're making your way to enlightenment, you're going to do things very differently than all your friends and family who aren't on the path. And when they look at your life, they're going to be like, that's weird. That's strange. You're going to get all kinds of comments like that. But understand that they're functioning through craving, anger, and ignorance. They're functioning through attachment and holding on. And they think it's strange that you guys are doing things separately because they can't fathom that, because they're so attached and they have to do things together. So a person who gets to enlightenment, they're not a follower. They're not going to conform to what other people do. So when people are telling you like, that's strange, that's weird, you guys do things separately, just understand that they're living life through a different sheet of music. You're living your life through a different sheet of music. And not everybody's going to do things the same way. Them looking at you and saying that's weird or that's strange, that's their mind craving permanence. And they think the way that they do things is the right way, and the way you do things is the wrong way. And now their ego is judging you as being, that's weird, that's strange, right? So you need to be able to see that for what it is, which is their own craving and their own ego judging you. And you got to just be comfortable with doing things the way that you know that is best and the way that is wise. In terms of you wanting other people to be happy, you need to understand that you can't create happiness for other people. And if you are, that's conditional happiness. And they're ultimately going to end up in the sadness and the frustration when you're no longer doing those things. If someone's going to be happy, they need to be happy internally, right? So if you keep going around trying to make everyone else happy, You're just feeding their cravings, desires, attachments, and they're getting conditional happiness. And now when you don't do those things, they're going to be sad. So instead, you do what you know is best for this life that you have. And now you practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, there are going to be situations where you do things for other people, because that's part of your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. But don't do it because you're trying to make them happy. Do it because you know it's wise for you to practice generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have some questions coming in here on Zoom. Let's see. My mom and I do not talk anymore because she is still very angry about me not meeting her expectations. I sent her text messages but receive no response. I accept that she don't want to be contacted at this moment. However, if I want to rebuild the relationship with her, what should I do now? Keep sending her text. No, that would be the last thing you're interested in doing. If she's decided that she's going to go away from you, just let it be. And if at some point her mind lets go of whatever her expectations are, then she will choose to contact you again. Just move on with your life, create your life in the way that you would like to create your life, do the things in your life that you would like to do in your life. And if your mom would like to be part of your life again, then she'll choose to do that. You continuing to send her text messages and trying to bring her into your life, that's because of your craving and your attachment. You're not going to be able to force or convince mom to have a relationship with you. She's going to need to decide to let go of her expectations, and you can't do that for her. So she's got to choose to do that. And then when she re-engages with you, then you'll be able to have your relationship with her. Here's some more. If your partner always forget what he promised to do, sometimes I'm happy to do it my own. However, if I have to do it all the time, then there will be resentment. What is a wiser decision to navigate in this situation? The resentment is coming up because of your expectation that your partner will do things. So if you said to your partner, like, hey, can you take out the trash? And they say, sure, I can take out the trash. And then you go off to go to bed, like I was giving this example, and you come back down and the trash hasn't been taken out. You don't have to take out that trash, right? You can just leave it there for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, whatever. And then at some point you go to your partner and you say, hey, I just would like to check in. Are you still planning to take out the trash? And they're going to say either yes or no, right? And if they say, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry, I forgot. And then they can handle it from there. So you don't have to necessarily just do the task because your partner's not doing it. But that resentment is coming from the longing, the yearning, the craving, and the expectation that you would like to let go of so that you don't have that resentment. With examples between you and your mom, my mom will just hang up before I can say those things. Also, in our culture, we don't really say, I love you. What can I do in this situation? Sorry for many questions. No worries. You can ask as many questions as you like. I don't have expectations of how many questions you should or shouldn't be asking. So you're welcome to ask any and all questions. So if your mom's hanging up before you can say those things, then just let it be. You don't have the opportunity to say those things, so you just let it be. Your mom sounds like she's not interested in having an open mind to learn a better way of life. And if that's where she's at, then that's where she's at. You need to create the better way of life for yourself, being unattached to your mom, and learn how to have a wonderful life, whether your mom's involved in your life or not. Don't allow your contentedness and your peacefulness to rest on whether or not your mom's in your life or not. If you can only be happy if your mom's in your life, this is an attachment. So you would like to create a life where you can enjoy it and be happy regardless of whether mom's in your life or not. Okay. Let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, so now one more thing on the Natural Law of Kamma, and then we'll take our little break. Is sometimes when people hear me teach the Natural Law of Kamma, they say, hold on, David, you said you can't run and hide from your Kamma. What about that situation where there was a bloody footprint at the murder scene? The bloody weapon was found under the bed of the person. There was blood all over their car, and they went to court. They were found not guilty. Didn't they escape their Kamma? And the answer is no, they didn't escape their Kamma. You just aren't there seeing all the Kamma, because what they experienced was the human laws. The human laws, through going through a court system, those are imperfect. They're never going to be created and administered and enforced perfectly because they're created and administered by human beings. But instead, the natural law of Kamma, you can't escape the results of that. So this individual who went to the court and they were found not guilty with all this evidence, they're still experiencing their unwholesome karma. You just might not be seeing it. They didn't go to jail, but that's not the only karma. There's these other things that they would experience as a result. They're going to have a bad reputation in the community because now that this news is spread all throughout the community, they're going to have a bad reputation. They can experience sickness, disease, physical and mental pain, a shortened lifespan. The way that this happens is that in order for somebody to kill, they need to have a significant amount of craving in their mind. And now with that craving, those cravings in their mind, they're going to experience a certain level of stress and anxiety within their own mind. That's going to put pressure on the organs of the body. And now they're going to experience things like sickness, disease, physical and mental pain, and a shorter lifespan. Because if their mind is continually being polluted and continually having discontentedness, it's going to put stress on the body. And now they're going to experience these types of results. If they've had enough craving, anger, and ignorance to be able to kill another human being, it's not like all their other relationships in their life are going perfect, right? They're going to have problems not only in this relationship where they ended up deciding to kill, but they're going to have problems in their other relationships too. So they're going to be experiencing hostility, aggression, and fights in their other relationships, and they can potentially be killed themselves. They're going to have a loss of income and wealth because now with that bad reputation, people aren't going to necessarily be interested in hiring them. They're also going to have to spend a lot of money to go to court and defend themselves. So that loss of income and wealth is part of their unwholesome karma. Again, they're going to have difficulties in their relationships. They're going to have difficulty securing and progressing in employment. They're going to have difficulties to acquire housing and the basic necessities to sustain their life. This is all their unwholesome karma. And then they're going to be experiencing discontentedness like guilt and shame and fear and things like this, stress and anxiety, and then rebirth itself, being reborn into other realms. If they didn't ever get to enlightenment in this life, then they can be reborn into other realms or even back into this realm and experiencing life again and again and again, sickness, aging, and death over and over and over again. So this person may not have experienced going to jail, but the laws of society are not what we're talking about. We're talking about the natural law of Kamma, and that's a law that's functioning at a much higher level than the laws of society. Somebody can escape the laws of society to a certain degree, but you can't escape the natural law of Kamma. An individual can experience all of these results, even though they've murdered and they didn't go to jail. They can't escape all these other experiences that they're having. So you can't run and hide from your karma. But when you see somebody found not guilty, that's not 100% of their karma. And you can even see people that are truly not guilty, but they're actually found guilty. So say, for example, like I was part of a street gang. And when I was 18, 20, 25 years old, I was out there selling drugs. Maybe I was murdering people. And maybe I never got caught for any of this kind of stuff. But now at the age of 25, I decided to get away from the street gang. And maybe I've been away from that for 6 months or a year or so. And now maybe there's some murder and it gets pinned on me, even though I'm away from this street gang, right? And now maybe I go to court and I'm found guilty, even though I had nothing to do with it whatsoever. I wasn't even involved, right? And now all those things that I went and did that I never got caught for, like the selling drugs and the murdering of other people, this particular situation where I actually didn't do the murder, now it's getting pinned on me and I might end up going to jail for a period of time, right? So you can experience the results of your decisions as the natural law of Kamma, but the human laws, they're imperfect, but you're still going to experience the results of anything that you choose to do wisely or unwisely. So the more you cultivate wisdom about this natural law, the more you'll be able to navigate the world more and more peacefully, because you're going to be able to see this cause and effect relationship between any decisions that you make. They're going to produce a result. If you make wise decisions, they're going to produce wholesome results. If you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results. The natural law of Kamma is one of the most unbiased teachers you will ever find. Whenever you're experiencing anything in life, you can look at it and figure out, what were the decisions that I made that led to this? Right? This is different than what you might do when you're off the path to enlightenment. Whenever you experience something when you're off the path to enlightenment, you might be blaming other people. Right? You might be thinking it's good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or, oh, it's this supreme being that's controlling me. But you got to change your thinking. Whenever you're experiencing anything in life, look at it and say, what were the decisions that I made that led to this situation? It doesn't mean the other person hasn't made certain decisions. You might be making 99.9% wise decisions in a certain situation. But if you have 0.9% or 0.1% of unwise decisions there, it's going to produce a certain amount of unwholesome results. Don't focus on the other person's 99% unwise things that they did. Focus on your 1%. Learn the wisdom behind your 1% and improve your 1%. Or improve your 20% or your 50%, whatever it was that led to that particular result that you experienced. Figure out what that is, cultivate the wisdom, and make different decisions. And where you have difficulties doing that, that's where you reach out to your teacher, and we can help you figure out what were the decisions that you made that led to any particular situation. And now you cultivate wisdom about that, and next time you make different decisions, and now you'll experience different results. Where in the past, when we just blame other people for what we experience, we never give ourselves the opportunity to cultivate wisdom. And that's why we keep experiencing the same things over and over and over. You're probably noticing this in certain parts of your life where you keep experiencing the same thing over and over and over. And that's just because the mind hasn't cultivated wisdom. So take each one of these opportunities when you're experiencing unwholesome results to cultivate wisdom. And where you need help, reach out to your teacher. I'm here to help you, and I'll help you cultivate the wisdom about that, so you can make different decisions and experience different results. Okay, so now is 11 o'clock. What I'm going to do is take a break here up until 11:20, give you guys a 20-minute break, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to teach you what is merit, and I'm going to teach you continued support on the path to enlightenment. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you afterwards. Okay, thank you guys for your questions and the great discussion.